I never meant to listen. In a building this old, privacy is a polite fiction. The walls are paper thin, the floors creak like gossip, and every apartment leaks its secrets after midnight. Most nights I heard televisions, arguments, the occasional slammed door. Nothing remarkable. Until him. It started on a Tuesday in late October, rain ticking against my window like impatient fingers. I was half asleep when the first sound slipped through. A low, steady cadence, thud, 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 perfectly measured, almost hypnotic. Then a breath, soft and fractured, caught somewhere between a sigh and a plea. A woman's voice, barely audible, shaped a single word I couldn't quite catch. Another breath, deeper this time, as though the air itself had turned heavy. The rhythm never faltered. It was patient, relentless, controlled. I lay perfectly still, sheets cool against my skin, heart suddenly loud in my ears. I told myself it was nothing. Neighbors, life, go back to sleep. But the next night it came again. Same hour, same unhurried tempo. This time the breath was sharper, more abandoned, rising and falling like a tide dragged by the moon. I pressed my palm flat against the wall, as if I could feel the vibration through plaster and lath. Heat bloomed low in my stomach, unwelcome and undeniable. I hated how quickly my body answered, how my own breathing tried to match that hidden pulse. Night after night, it continued, never the same voice twice, yet always the same unshakable command behind it. Sometimes a whisper, too low for words, but thick with intent, would drift through, curling around my spine like smoke. Sometimes only silence broken by a single, shattered exhale that made my toes curl against the sheets. I began waiting for it. I began needing it. I would lie in the dark, lights off, window cracked so the city's distant hum couldn't drown him out, and let the sounds paint pictures I had no right to imagine. By day, I barely saw him. A tall silhouette in the stairwell, broad shoulders filling a charcoal coat, the quiet close of a door. He moved like a man who never hurried, who never needed to. Mid-40s perhaps, silver threading the dark hair at his temples, eyes the color of winter water, clear, cold, unreadable. When our paths crossed, he inclined his head, nothing more. A polite stranger. At night, he was something else entirely. I started inventing reasons to be in the hallway after 11, taking out trash that didn't need taking out, checking mail that had already been checked. I wanted to see who left his apartment flushed and soft-eyed, hair mussed, lips swollen. I never did. They vanished like smoke, leaving only the echo of their surrender behind. One night, the rhythm was slower than usual, almost languid. Each measured thud followed by a silence so complete I could hear my own pulse. Then a voice, his voice, low and rough. A single murmured command I felt more than heard. The answering sound she made was raw, helpless, devastating. My skin prickled. Heat flooded me so fiercely I had to bite my lip to stay quiet. My fingers pressed hard against the wall, as though I could reach through brick and mortar and touch whatever sorcery he was weaving on the other side. I didn't sleep that night. I lay staring at the ceiling, body thrumming, mind spiraling. Curiosity had sharpened into something darker, hungrier. I hated him for it. I hated myself more for the way my breath caught every time I remembered that low, deliberate murmur. I was no longer just listening. I was waiting. It happened on a Thursday, just past midnight. I'd lingered in the hallway longer than necessary, pretending to fumble with keys, while the sounds from his apartment still echoed faintly, fading now. The woman's breathing evening out into quiet. The corridor was dim, lit only by a single sconce that flickered like it resented the job. His door opened without a sound. He stepped out, coat slung over one arm, shirt sleeves rolled to the elbow. The overhead light caught the strong line of his forearm, the watch that sat heavy on his wrist. He paused when he saw me, something unreadable moving behind his eyes. "Evening," he said, voice low, a shade rougher than daylight ever allowed. I managed a nod, pulse already skittering. Up close, he smelled like cedar and something darker, whiskey maybe, or simply the night itself. He didn't move to pass. Instead, he leaned one shoulder against the wall, effectively caging the space without touching me. The air between us thickened. "Thin walls," he murmured, studying my face with lazy intensity. The words landed like a match on dry leaves. Heat surged up my throat. He knew. Of course he knew. He'd probably heard my breathing change night after night, heard the sheets shift when I couldn't lie still. I lifted my chin, refusing to look away. "They are." A faint smile curved his mouth. Not kind, not cruel, simply certain. "Some people buy earplugs." His gaze traveled over my face, slow and deliberate, lingering on my mouth before returning to my eyes. "Others don't seem to mind the noise." My breath tangled. The hallway felt suddenly smaller, warmer. I could feel the heat coming off him, the quiet restraint in the way he held himself, every inch the composed neighbor by day, something far more dangerous by night. "I mind," I said, the lie soft but steady. Sometimes his smile deepened, just enough to reveal a hint of teeth. Only sometimes. He pushed away from the wall, closing the small distance until I had to tip my head back to hold his stare, not touching, never touching, but close enough that I felt the disturbance in the air, the way his presence pressed against my skin like a hand. "Careful," he said, voice velvet and steel. "Curiosity has consequences." Then he was gone. Footsteps measured down the hall, leaving me trembling against my own door. I didn't move until the echo of his steps faded completely. When I finally let myself inside, I leaned back against the closed door, heart hammering so hard I was sure he could hear it through the walls. He was right. I hadn't bought earplugs, and now he knew exactly why. 2 nights later, a knock, 3 measured taps sounded at my door just after 9. I opened it to to find him leaning against the frame, bottle of red wine in one hand, the other tucked casually into his pocket. He wore black, no coat, sleeves still rolled. The hallway light carved shadows along the line of his jaw. "Dinner," he said simply. Not a question. I should have hesitated. Instead, I stepped aside. His apartment smelled of garlic and rosemary, something simmering low on the stove. The space was spare, masculine dark wood leather, books stacked in deliberate piles. No photographs, no clutter, only the low glow of lamps and the faint strains of jazz curling from hidden speakers. He poured wine without asking what I liked, handed me a glass, fingers brushing mine for the briefest second. The contact lingered like a brand. We ate at a small table by the window overlooking the rain-slick street. Conversation stayed light at first, whether the building's eccentric elevator, the best coffee within 3 blocks, but every word felt weighted, like he was testing how much pressure I could take before I bent. He watched me over the rim of his glass, eyes steady. "You've been listening a long time." I set my fork down. "You've been performing a long time." A low chuckle, more vibration than sound. "Performing," he repeated, tasting the word. "Interesting choice." He rose, circled behind my chair. I felt him before I saw him, the shift in air, the warmth at my back. His hand settled lightly on the nape of my neck, thumb tracing the fine hairs there. Not possessive, not yet, simply certain. "Tell me what you heard," he said, breath grazing my ear. I swallowed. "Everything." His thumb stilled, and my voice came out softer than intended. "I wanted to know what it felt like." Silence stretched, thick enough to taste. Then his fingers slid down, resting just above my collarbone, pressure featherlight, yet absolute. "Stand up." I did. He didn't kiss me. He simply turned me, guided me back until my shoulders met the wall beside the bookshelf. The jazz slowed to something smoky and languid. His hand flattened against the wall beside my head, the other settling at my waist, thumb tracing the edge of my ribcage through fabric, deliberate circles that made my breath hitch. He leaned in until his forehead nearly touched mine, until I could feel the warmth of his exhale on my lips. "Still curious?" he asked, voice a low rasp. I managed a nod. His eyes darkened. "Then pay attention." He moved slowly, as though time belonged to him alone. A brush of knuckles along my jaw, the barest pressure of his thumb against my lower lip, the way his hand slid to the small of my back, guiding me closer until the space between us vanished. Every touch was measured, restrained, devastating. He never hurried. He didn't need to. My pulse stuttered and raced beneath his palm. He felt it, and the corner of his mouth lifted in acknowledgement. When he finally spoke again, his lips grazed the shell of my ear. "You're trembling." I was. I couldn't stop. He drew back just enough to see my face, eyes searching mine with that same unhurried intensity. Then he took my hand, led me down the short hallway to a room lit only by the city's glow through half-closed blinds. The door closed with a soft click that sounded like surrender. I don't remember undressing. I only remember the weight of his gaze, the way his hands mapped every inch of me like territory he'd already decided was his. The way he held me suspended on the edge of something vast and consuming, drawing it out until my breaths were no longer my own, until the only sounds in the room were the ones he allowed. He was exactly as ruthless as I'd imagined, and infinitely worse. I woke alone in my own bed the next morning, sheets tangled, skin still humming. I didn't remember walking back. I didn't remember much after the moment. The world had narrowed to nothing but his voice in my ear, and the slow, inexorable unraveling he'd coaxed from me again and again, until I had nothing left to give. There was a note on my pillow, heavy cream paper, his handwriting spare and elegant. You listened well. Knock when you want to learn more. That night, the sounds started again, same cadence, same unshakable rhythm, but different now. The woman's breathing fractured in ways I recognized. I pressed my palm to the wall and felt the echo of my own surrender in her gasps. I should have been jealous. I wasn't. I was impatient. At 12:47 a.m., I stood outside his door in nothing but silk and anticipation. My knuckles hovered, trembling slightly. I could still turn back. I could pretend the last week had been a fever dream. Instead, I knocked 3 measured taps. The door opened almost immediately. He leaned against the frame in the same unhurried way, shirt unbuttoned at the throat, eyes gleaming with dark amusement. Couldn't wait, he asked softly. No, I whispered. He stepped aside, letting me in. The door closed behind me with the same soft click I remembered. This time, there was no dinner. This time, there was only the slow, deliberate drag of his gaze as he backed me against the wall and started all over again, teaching me, claiming me, ruining me for anyone else. The walls stayed thin. I no longer minded. And when the rhythm began again, nights later steady, unrelenting, perfect, I smiled into the dark. Because now I knew exactly what it felt like, and I knew exactly where to go when I wanted it again. All I had to do was knock.